Good afternoon. Hi, my name is Michelle Kelo. I work at Capital One in enterprise architecture, and I have a specific focus on case management and fraud. My co-presenter here, Tarek Aridi, is the lead engineer and designer on the case solution that we're going to be talking about today. Title of our talk today, Slay the Monolith. We're going to talk about our journey to do just that with our case management solution. Okay, our story is probably a common one, or at least I think it is. About 14 years ago, we purchased a case solution, an out-of-the-box case solution, which was largely a fit-for-purpose solution for one of our larger use cases at Capital One. Being a fit-for-purpose solution, it had all the capabilities that we needed, and the work that we did on it was largely to just integrate it with our backends. It worked great, had all the features that we needed. It required little to no customizations. It was easy to deploy and easy to keep current. So once we got that successfully into production, we decided to add another use case. And this use case was a use case that had synergies with our first one. Everything was going well. It was easy to customize, very few customizations actually. It was easy to configure. We were able to add the new features, new case types without issue. And again, maintenance and upgrades were still performed without issue. All right, that was 10 years ago. And over the last 10 years, this happened. Gradually over time, we add lots of new case types, lots of new features. We've lost the synergy across those case types. And decisions were made over and over again that, well, we've got this new need. It's easier to add it to this existing platform than it is to build a new one from scratch. So what we ended up with was an overly customized and overly complex case platform. All right? This platform is now very brittle. And there's additional risk in that we support multiple case types. At last count, we had over 200 case types on this platform with over 800 case type subtypes supported here. Now, when one of our case types has new intent and we deploy that, we have the added risk of that deployment impacting the others. Or if we have to have downtime for one release for a certain domain, then everyone is impacted and everyone's down. So there's lots of risk, and this platform has become very brittle. So what was our solution to this? Our solution was to federate using a case framework. So by federation, I mean we decentralized our monolithic case solution into line of business, domain-owned, domain-developed, and domain deployed case solutions. These decoupled solutions, they reduce the risk and they reduce the complexity, and they allow for better resource efficiency and scale. The framework that we built is a tool set that provides out-of-the-box case solutions or case services and features on top of which our business partners can build their own case solutions. The framework was built as an inner-sourced effort, meaning we leveraged the development resources across our enterprise to contribute to this, and we use JBPM as its foundation. Okay, so why JBPM? We chose JBPM because, well, it's truly open source, unlike our proprietary solution that we have today. It is, the enterprise version is fully supported by Red Hat, so we can take advantage of their expertise as we build this out. It has a rich host of capabilities that are perfect fit for a case management solution. It's got full support for BPMN. It's got an integrated rules engine, and it's got support for monitoring, dashboarding, and reporting. It's a very mature open source product, and it's got a vibrant development community that is constantly making it better. And lastly, it's very flexible and easily extensible, and the extensibility is what we're looking for as we build out this framework for our solutions. Okay, so what were the key architecture principles that were guiding us towards this approach? One is decompose monolithic applications into a simpler, smaller, manageable services and design these for reuse. That allows us to have more flexibility, it gives us faster time to market, and enables federation for our team and team independence. Leverage open source technologies where they're mature and well supported. Well, Red Hat fits this to a T. JBPM fits this to a T. This allows us to focus our valuable developer resources on more differentiated capabilities, and it lowers our total cost of ownership. Selecting the right tool for the right use case. This helps us avoid the unnecessary customizations that we did on our previous solution. And lastly, pivot to cloud and modern technologies, allowing us to have a reliable, resilient, and scalable infrastructure for our case solutions. Okay, so the start of our journey, we took our monolith and we cataloged all the capabilities that it supported. And we looked across all of those case types that we support today, all the capabilities, and looked for the ones that are shared. And we noticed that roughly 80% of the capabilities supported by that large monolith are shared across all of the domain case types. And so we took that catalog of shared capabilities and used that as the basis for building our framework. So we have core capabilities, things that you would expect, like being able to create a case, search a case, assign and transfer a case. We have capabilities for agent effectiveness, things like configurable queues, workflow automation, get next. Get next is a feature provided that when the agent clicks get next, they're delivered the next most important case to work. Monitoring and reporting. These are things like dashboarding, queue depth reporting, SLA reporting and alerts, and security and maintenance. And those are things like logging, auditing, SSO integration, role-based access, and entitlements. Okay. Here is a view, a high-level view of our case framework. So it contains a set of core case services that are easily extendable for the domains. It contains a very generic, lightweight workflow that is intended to be extended for the domain needs. It contains an embedded rules engine if the use case needs it. It has input and output adapters for API integration as well as streaming integration. And it has a layer of management tools, and these are to support our logging, audit, security, dashboarding, and alike. And lastly, it has a persistence layer. We have an out-of-the-box case model, which is very generic, that will deliver your case type, your case subtype, your case number, case creation date, for example. And that's intended to be extended by the domains that build their solutions on top of it. Here's a view of, it's the federated view. And so if we look to the right, you'll see here's the framework that we just talked about. On top of that is a UI presentation layer. Now, we set out to explicitly design this framework to be UI agnostic. In this way, the developers or the domains using it can select whatever technology makes sense for them for their UI. And also, it allows us to expose our case engine to our front-end self-service agents. In the middle here, we have a kind of representation of our federated case. So each one of these is itself its own case solution. Each has its own persistence layer, each has its own customized services, each has its own front end. Completely independent case solutions built on this framework. Underneath, you see something called the reference app. The reference app is a tool that we've generated and is basically an out-of-the-box case solution from front to back, but it is fully generic. It's not extended in any way. And the value that this adds is it allows our business partners something to start with. It's a launching off point, so to speak, that they can take this and then build their extensions that are needed for their domains. As we move to the left, we have our integration platforms. We integrate through our API gateway and our messaging broker. And all the way to the left, you see our integration platforms, our channels, our systems of record, third-party services, and horizontal services. One thing that we haven't talked about was the case registry. That's a new component. It's not necessarily part of the framework, but it is an important component here, because as we lose our monolith, we also lose the one place to go to say, what are all the cases that we have for this one customer of this one customer's account? So we built out a registry, which is a lightweight registry with exposed services that contains just enough information to identify the cases for a given customer or a given customer's account. So when any case is created or closed or updated in one of our case solutions, those events will be registered in the registry, and so that we can answer that questions. I've got a customer on the phone. I want to know what cases are open for this customer at any given time. Okay. So if we compare where we are from where we started and where we will be when we finish our target state, we started with a monolithic case platform, and we're going to end up with a domain-owned case application and a central registry. We started with a high-cost commercial-based solution, and we're going to end up with a much lower-cost open-source-based framework solutions. We started with centralized development and deployment, and we're going to end up with federated development and deployment via an inner-sourcing model. We have a very inflexible case model and core services in our proprietary solution, and we end up with the ability, using the framework, have an extensible case model and core services. In our current monolith, our UI is tightly bound to the case engine, and in our target state, we'll have a UI-agnostic case engine. And lastly, in our existing environment, in order to do analytics on our case data, we rely on batch extracts nightly that get pushed to a data warehouse where we do our analytics. In our target state, we'll be streaming our events, and so that we have the opportunity to do real-time analytics via our streaming platform. Okay. One thing I want to say in all transparency is, while it sounds like rainbows and unicorns, it's not always that easy, right? So this requires work. It requires commitment, especially from our business partners who have to dedicate their very valuable development resources to work on framework development versus feature development. Luckily, they see the value in doing this, and in the end state, the agility that it will give us. This view here is a component view that shows how the framework was developed on loosely coupled component layers. So at the bottommost layer, you've got Red Hat EAP, on top of which you have the Red Hat JBoss BPM suite. On top of that, you have the case framework that we were just talking about. Then when our domains look to build out their own case solutions, they further extend that and build their own features in microservices, whatever they need for their unique domains, build on top of that. And then the UI is built separately, integrated through to the case engine via our API gateway through RESTful services. Okay. So Tarek's going to take this a little bit further and talk about the mechanics of building out the framework.
Okay. Can you guys hear me? Thank you, Michelle. Okay, so how do we make JBPM fun? Okay. Us as Capital One, we're a financial as well as technology company. And we've been servicing customers for a long time. So exactly we know what we want for a case management solution. So as an IT team, which I represent, we partnered with the business as well as the architecture, and we tallied up all the services which Michelle has talked about, and we came up with a plan based on jBPM. So Everything behind the scene is JBPM based within the components or the essence of JBPM, which we built on top of that. So all the services, the basic services which were needed, were taken and designed as one at a time based on Java, as well as we kept in mind how to tap into the power of JBPM for each service. All this stuff is documented in JBPM documentation, how to tie into the JBPM engine, okay? But one thing, well, we have like one chart in mind. We don't want to tamper with the existing JBPM out of the box from the BPMS so that we don't become like off chart, basically. We want to make sure backward compatible, again, as much as possible, which we have been able to achieve that so far. So no database changes in JBPM and no actual code changes in the BPMS solution. Everything we built is on top, a wrapper around that. And remember, this is, Michelle mentioned, this is like an inner source solution. Eventually, with like the intent, the goal intent was to make it open source, but until we decide to do that, this has not happened yet. But instead, we made it as an inner source solution, meaning other people from outside our team can come and contribute and add services. So we know what we want to build, what kind of services we need, and we want people to come and help doing that. We want people to get involved. So to do this, we had to build all the infrastructure, the mechanics, the pipeline, the GitHub, as well as a process, basically. Just same thing we do like for open source solution, okay? And we built a mechanism to like nightly builds, to keep testing this iteratively, as well as deployment into our development environment. Because remember, this is a framework. We don't take it to production. You can. It has, by the way, it's fully functional. It has all the features needed to build any standard case solution out of the box. This was a very important thing to mention. But our clients, our internal clients, would take this solution and build their own solution. The same way, the same concept we follow here. Build our own services. They can build their additional services. Michelle alluded to 80% versus 20%. So each LOB might have specific needs, which they can build, customize on top of that. So think of it as a multi-layered onion in a way. So the core is JBPM and AP, the case framework around it, then the client will build their own wrapper on top of that. So having said that, once we have all these things, on a nightly basis we build, we get the jar files, as well the Maven, which are the K-jar files, which basically present the, these guys present every case has been associated with at least one main process, which is that's the tie into JBPM. Those go into, like, we deploy them into local Maven for performance reasons. We can do it on the remote Maven repos, but we do the K-jars in the local repos. And we take all this and deploy it in atomic JBPM application, which you can replicate as much as you need. In the cloud, you can make elastic services. But this is atomic level. Each will get like the jar files, which are part of the K-jar, basically like the key server in JBPM, plus some configuration, plus the Maven files. So now we have fully functional out-of-the-box JBPM solution, which can be ready to tap into the reference application, which Michelle mentioned. This is agnostic. Again, we're UI agnostic. You can use any kind of UI you want, any technology. I'll show that later on. But again, if all the servers are exposed in RESTful fashion based on the JBPM recipe, okay? So far, so good. So now let's go take it one level deeper. How did we utilize JBPM to build what we built? JBPM has all the, has all the components to extend its features, its capabilities. And that's all based on the Chi server, or also the intelligent process server, okay? Everything you see in green was built additional, and the things in purple are, red hat blue, or red, red hat red, are like, we utilize them out of the box. So EAP is the canvas, JBPM on top of that. Then we add our own features. This is, again, this is just a framework. And coincidentally, the extenders can repeat the same exact process as we did to build their extension, okay? So the first line of defense we have is like exposing our services in a RESTful fashion. So just like any other service, JBPM exposes, our case management services are exposed the same way. So when a RESTful request is made for the JBPM, first it'll be intercepted by the, actually, oops, this changed on me. So this by the RESTful endpoint, which in turn forces things into the command executor, which also we built to assess, to verify that is this request valid? Does it have the right context? Is the requester authorized to use it or not? Plus, we can have multiple mutations of it. For the same service, maybe like a group A might have like the same service, they cloned it and used different things. So this command executor is very essential because it knows what service to call. But after validating, it goes and requests from the CDI oops. Okay, you can see it. So the first thing is like once the request made from CDI will based on the command name, it will send the proper module, okay? And the executor will perform that, will execute that module. And then in step number 5, it sends information, the context, or the payload coming in with the request, sends it, this first time ties into JBPM. Once from step 6, sends all the information to the, it calls JBPM to execute the associated process ID. This is a very important piece because this is specifically for case creation. A case gets created by persisting its data to the database through the JBPM, and we leverage the, we call like wait states in the workflows. Wait state could be a trigger, could be a user task, anything that makes JBPM wait and persist it to the database so that subsequent calls happen. So this is a very essential piece in our design, okay? In turn, when that happens, the request traverses back all the way back to the client, and the client will have the request, depending what kind of service you're calling. Sometimes you just get confirmation, yes, it's okay. Sometimes you get the payload back, okay, depending on the service. Okay, sounds great. So next step is I'm going to go into a demo. So now the fun part is out. Let's go back, show a demo, and how this was used. So I'm going to switch videos here. Okay. So before I start, now we're going to flip things all the way back up. I'm going to go back from the user perspective. How this was used? I'm going to take and explain to you how one of our clients, how they took the case framework and they built their own solution, including building a UI. Now that's one highlighting the UI piece. If you remember, like Michelle mentioned, the UI agnostic piece. So this UI is based on Angular and Node.js, which calling RESTful services, and like it was designed based on the specific business needs for our one-fraud applications. So the first thing that happens, okay, it's the essence here is not in the understanding what the application is doing, but how look at what's happening there. So the first thing we're going to do, assuming like the assumption is, in this application, all cases for fraud cases have been created by some other process, upstream process. So we have a bunch of cases queued up in the case management solution. Now agents come in and they start doing using the queuing system we built, and they start doing the get next, and like to work these cases, right? So the first thing we have is the landing screen. In this solution, they have a landing page to give the agent a mean to search for cases, to get these cases. They can explicitly put a case number and search for it, or utilize the get next solution down here. This is the get next button. or you can use other means. Okay, this is one implementation. You can do anything, depending on the business needs. So once that happens, then of course the case, multiple things are happening behind the scene. So the UI does a lot of orchestration, including calling the services we built in the core framework, as well as other services. So in this view here, which I highlighted some of the proprietary stuff, I don't want to expose people's names and addresses and SSN numbers. This is a specific case where on the top left-hand side is the person's name, address, all the information about the person themselves. On the right-hand side, we have the case details itself, as well as the additional service was extended by our client using jBPM, the framework itself, to add their own metadata, their own database, as well as all their own services, APIs, which the same way we built ours. So the extension of extension. And in contrary, like, the UI has to build all the proper fields to manage all the services as they need to, these cases. Okay? Any buttons here you see, maybe like it's submit an action back to the execute a RESTful service against the jBPM, one of the things we have. And this could be very elaborate by extracting a bunch of information. And on the fly, you can update the case, add more details, as I'm showing here. So not only when we create a case based on like specific data, but we can take this data and mutate it. In this case, we're splitting some transactions based on some specific needs, right? So many things you can do. Again, Java and jBPM is the limit, as well as Angular. So again, this is just like give you a feel what this is providing. All the services, like not only we have the actual services that the client can call, but also we have the managing the lifecycle of the case, including leaving case history. And we can say, we can know what happened when, by whom, so on and so forth, as well as part of the audit processes. Okay. Also, we built multiple mechanisms to tap into existing ecosystems, such as document management, queuing management, whether it's SDP, Kafka, or anything else. We're not bound, we're not tied to any specific solution per se, because we want to stay truly open source. In our situation here, we tapped into something called enterprise imaging from IBM. I think it's IBM, it's EI, for document management, as well as Kafka, as many other things. So we have all the flexibilities. So for this solution, they have a need to send outbound documents, receive documents, and review documents. So that's what also this is doing. Okay. Okay. This is a piece like, we built also like dynamically, we can define any document templates. Or we can dynamically retrieve those templates and display them on the screen. All the stuff is built in the framework. So any client can define, okay, my template, my letter, outbound letter has all these fields on a field, and this field has this type and this range. So we can define all these things, and we provide RESTful APIs to bring all this dynamic data to dynamically build the screens in the UIs. And that's what you're seeing there. Okay, carrying on. And this is, going to see a sample. Okay, this is one sample retrieved. Here we have the case. Whoops. Knock, knock. There you go. Sorry, I think timed out. So you can tell here, like this was retrieved based on the case ID up on top. And you can attach things and detach things, case documents, and you can retrieve them and view them. Okay. So that was the first part of the demo. Now, the second part has to do with the managing. So now we're going to go back down one level, okay? So we went from like how we did it, and then we showed you how the UI was built. Now we're going to go like one step down, is managing any case lifecycle. What are the things you can do? So including the case creation, how we do it, as well as what servers are available to once a case is created, what you can do with it, as well as dispositioning a case, meaning closing it down or making a decision on it. So that's what this thing. So in my example, one thing we're going to do is, before we go there, let's go back and see this piece. I think. Okay. So this first one is how to create a case. I'm going to freeze at one point, and we can speak about this later on. Okay, so if you've seen this, the first box, which is this guy, is the actual sample post request to create a case. One thing, very essential thing it has the name of the reference ID, which is called process ID, for that case, has to be associated with the case, which is, I'm showing it down here. So this call came in from the what was called for the RESTful service. It came to the extension and jBPM, and then it was then the kjar was, or the process ID was instantiated. This is the main process. Once it gets to wait state, in case we're using signals, it persisted all the data we're passing. In this example, we're showing only just the main framework, but assuming somebody extended it, you see you have other extended payloads. Not only this section, you have other sections, depending on the business, what they want. So regardless, once it hits that wait state, it will persist. All the data in the proper tables were defined and gives you back the case number, which we're showing it here. This is just to show you the case number. One thing to note, though, is the big box in red, and I'm sorry about this. Okay, here we go. The bottom right big box. Aside from the case with the main process, we have also created multiple sub-processes which can be triggered at any point throughout the case lifecycle. Those could be very simplistic JBPM workflows, or could be very elaborate. It doesn't matter, right? So as long as you pass through the right information this process needs and expect the right information out. I'm gonna demonstrate that as well. Okay. So this is called the ad hoc, we call them micro workflows, but they're utilizing the ad hoc service. Okay. Okay, so here I'm going to show you, these are the same set of services that Michelle had talked about. That's what we have built. These are, as the core case management services that anybody would need, as mentioned there. Okay, and then we also built another piece, which is a very essential piece, which is called the Administration Central. All what this does is it's a tool to configure our case management solution. Michelle mentioned about the case types, subtypes, how they got out of hand, as well as queues, because the queues are like a mechanism for the business to decide, oh, today my highest priority is this kind of cases which have fit this profile. So we can manage the profiles and the priority of the queues in the Admin Central. Plus we can create documentation of the templates I've showed you. So this is like catch-all. Anything that has to be configuration-wise, we do it from Admin Central. It's also based on jBPM, as well as we have a UI for it based on the Angular and Node.js interface. So again, the intent is to provide a holistic, end-to-end functional solution. Okay, so now that we have created the case, I'm told you what other things we can use. Let's remember this, the same guy that we went through, and we said we created the case, and we have this process here, which is hidden. Okay, I'm going to call it the it's the sub-process. Let's call it the summit process, sample workflow. Oh, here we go. It was hiding under the thing. Sorry, that go away. Okay, this is called trigger process workflow. This is the when you created the case, it was planted in the ready for us to use. And this is the piece I want to use today. Okay. So again, here, we're assuming like we're going to create a case. After the case is created, then we're going to call this micro workflow, which will retrieve the case information. So one thing we're going to pass, once case created, we get a case number. We're going to take this case number and call this micro workflow. So the workflow, we're going to take this case number and retrieve the information and go and assess, do stuff with it. Call other services based on what the business needs, okay? And again, like I mentioned, these micro workflows could be as elaborate as you want them to be. And this is the micro workflow like we in question here. So it's going to come in. So it's going to be called, we're going to retrieve a case, and just going to assess based on its type and subtype, and go either route. If we say red, if its type is red hat, if its type is red and subtype hat, it's going to be into the node. We're going to add a node service. If it is cap1 type and subtype, we're going to go back and call the pend case. So a very simple thing just to demonstrate the process, the power of this. By the way, the ad hoc, this ad hoc command, you can give it any input you want because like it's the payloads agnostic. You can pay, depending on your sub-process workflow, you can give it any input as long as the input matches your needs here. At the same time, you can overload the response back. So you can have like an overloaded JSON response back, and you can assess it and utilize it in your UI the way you want it to. So I hope you see the power of this. This is very powerful stuff here. Okay. By the way, to execute this, I'm going to use like a tool called JMeter. Probably most of you know that as the mechanism, since you are UI agnostic. So we're going to use instead of Postman, we're going to use JMeter. In this case, I'm just creating 3 cases, and for each case, I'm doing the same exact kind of test, right? So in here, I'm calling these 3 cases, and then we have each one. For each case, we'll retrieve, call the trigger, which is basically the sub workflow I mentioned. Then we're going to retrieve the case again, see before and after what happened before, how was it before we called the trigger, and what changed, and also we're calling add nodes, what kind of nodes it has. I'm just going to go over one case, just to prove demonstrate the concept. So this one is the first create case. Okay, this is the ontology for it. And this is the process ID we call it as the one I mentioned, this very essential piece. And the type is cap, and the subtype is 1. And the response, we've got the case number. So I'm going to take the entity 566. So I'm going to take this case number, and first I'm going to retrieve its information. This is the get command. Okay. This is before called the microflow. And notice the status. In this case, the case is ready to be worked because like this is status. So the status is ready. That's what, for now, that's what you have to worry about. Now we're going to call the trigger, which is the process I showed you about, the ad hoc. So we're passing the case number. And if you look at in the data type here, I'm passing other things which I might need in the future. At one point, they had case closure and notes. But in the ad hoc data, it can be anything you want to do based on, as long as your sub-process, as I mentioned, understands that. So, and by the way, this signal name, my process happened to be called Summit Demo, okay? So once we call this API, it's going to, in this, it can return a whole bunch of information, but in this case, we didn't just say okay. Now we're going to call the retrieve again to see what happened. The same case, which ending 566, post calling that ad hoc command. Okay, and see how the case status was changed to pend, basically. The case was pended, as well as we added notes we called other service to add notes, saying case node ad hoc, date, blah, 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 and user ID. So this is basically the demo I wanted to show, just to illustrate how easy this is. So after this, I hope you can see the power for just built, basically on the implementation of the case, on the framework. How we were able to build this robust, agile, and extensible case management solution using jBPM. And this, as a matter of fact, we have trivialized jBPM based on my experience in jBPM. And Kiran attests to that. Kiran, by the way, he's one of the lead developers and the brain behind most of the stuff here. Thank you, Kiran. So our experience before that was other division with the bank. JBPM was basically, it's like a taboo. Oh my God, most developers did not even, they kind of shied away from it because they felt it was complex. So what we've done, knowing that, being that experience coming into this different division, we intended to trivialize JBPM, but make it very compartmentalized and make people use it as is and have an easier way, better experience, and we have achieved that. As a matter of fact, our clients have been taking what we built, knowing nothing, walking into fresh, not on JBPM. We had to teach them what JBPM is and show them, right? Not all of them, most, right? And they were able to deliver into production within less than 5 months, the UI and their extended case. So we have been very successful. At the same time, we have slayed the monolith of being like one big solution and very non-agile, very hard. Now everybody owns their own solution. They can do anything they want with it. So it's been a great experience. And that's all what we have.